Today by the website Wikileaks.org. Well, we're joined now by two guests. Julian Assange is the co-founder of Wikileaks.org, oversaw the release of this top-secret U.S. military footage. He's joining us from Washington, D.C., and by video stream from Brazil, we're joined by Glenn Greenwald, the constitutional law attorney and blogger for Salon.com. We called the Pentagon and the U.S. Army, but they didn't respond to our request for them to be on the broadcast. Julian Assange, tell us how you got this footage.
We got this footage sometime last year. We don't disclose precise times for reasons of source protection. When we first got it, we were told that it was important and that it showed the killing of journalists, but we didn't have any other context. And we spent quite some months after breaking the decryption looking closely into this, and the more we looked, the more disturbing it became. This is a sequence which has a lot of detail, and I think in some ways covers most of the bad aspects of the aerial war in Iraq and what we must be able to infer is going on in Afghanistan. So we see not only this initial opening shot on a crowd which is clearly mostly unarmed. There may be some confusion as to whether two people are armed, whether there is a camera who are armed, but it's clear that the majority of the people are in fact unarmed, and as it later turns out, two of those people are simply holding cameras. But we go on from there into seeing the shooting of people rescuing a wounded man, and none of those people are armed. What's important to remember is that every step that the Apache takes in opening fire is authorized. It does pause before shooting. It explains the situation, sometimes exaggerating a little, to its commanders and gets authorized permission. These are not bad apples. This is standard practice. You can hear it from the tones of the voices of the pilots that this is in fact another day at the office. These pilots have evidently, and gunners have evidently become so corrupted, morally corrupted by the war, that they are looking for excuses to kill. That is why you hear this segment, come on buddy, just pick up a weapon, when Saeed, one of their Reuters employees, is crawling on the curb. They don't want him for intelligence value to understand the situation. The man is clearly of no threat whatsoever. He's prostrate on the ground. Everyone else has been killed. They just want an excuse to kill. And it's some kind of, appears to me to be some kind of video game mentality, where they just want to get a high score, get their kill count up. And later on you'll hear them proudly proclaiming how they killed 12 to 15 people.
Julian, how has the Pentagon responded to this footage?
It's very interesting. So yesterday, the Pentagon stated that the original investigation that it did into whether the acts broke the rules of engagement, the rules that soldiers must obey before shooting, they came to the conclusion then that there was no violation of those rules, that all the pilots in fact acted properly, and gunners. They reiterated that last night, that in fact it was their view that that original investigation came to the right conclusion, and that they would not be reopening the investigation. However, we hear that that may be about to change. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but our sources in CENTCOM say that there may be a change. Also, late last night, the Pentagon suddenly decided it liked the Freedom of Information Act after all. Reuters put in a Freedom of Information request for this video in August 2007 and did not receive any response whatsoever for over a year, and never has received, to our knowledge, the video. But yesterday the Pentagon released on the CENTCOM website 6 files relating to this event. There is one that is the most important, which is the investigative report into whether this action broke the rules of engagement. Really quite a telling report. So the tone and language is all about trying to find an excuse for the activity. This is if your own lawyer wrote a report for you to submit to the court. It's very clear that is the approach, to try and find any mechanism to excuse the behaviour, and that is what ended up happening. Something that has been missed in some of the press reportage about this is that there is a third attack just 20 minutes later by the same crew, involving 3 Hellfire missiles fired onto an apartment complex where the roof was still under construction. We have fresh evidence from Baghdad that there were 3 families living in that apartment complex, many of whom were killed, including women, and we sent a team down there to collect that evidence. So that is in the full video we released, not in the short one, because we didn't yet have that additional evidence. Innocent bystanders walking down the street are also killed in that attack.
Do you know who these Apache helicopter teams, what this unit is?
We don't have the names of the teams. However, we have details about the unit, and there was a chapter or half chapter in a book called The Good Soldiers by a Washington Post reporter, released late last year, that does cover the ground unit that moved in to collect the bodies, and was the unit who also called in the Apaches to that area. An important thing that we know from classified documentation is that there were reports of small arms fire in the general vicinity. This was not an ongoing battle. The Pentagon released statements implying that this was a firefight, and the Apaches were called into the middle of a firefight, and the journalists walked into this firefight. That is simply a lie. At 9:50 a.m. Baghdad time, U.S. military documentation states that there was small arms fire in the general vicinity, in the suburb somewhere of New Baghdad, and that there was no PID, there was no positive identification of who the shooter was. So, in other words, some bullets were received in the general area, no US troops were killed or they were heard. It could have even been cars backfiring. There was no positive identification of where those shots were coming from. And the Apaches were sent up to scout out the general region, and they saw this group of men milling around in a square, showing the Reuters photographer something interesting to photograph. So the claim that this was a battle and the Reuters guys were sort of caught in the crossfire, or it was some kind of active attack that needed an immediate response by the Apache, is simply a lie.
We're going to come back to this discussion and, well, what's happening to Wikileaks.org, not only as a result of releasing this, but other sensitive documents. Julian Assange is our guest, co-founder of Wikileaks. Also, Glenn Greenwald will join us, who has been writing about this. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. Back in a minute.